played that position, you know what you get taught in Little League, which is you got to go through the scenario before every pitch, the full scenario. If the ball is hit to me, what am I going to do? What's the situation? Where are the runners? Who is the runner?
Right.
Who's the runner at the plate? You got to know all that stuff. And Marco on that play did not appear to know, and it did lead to an extra base runner. Now, here's what Bob Melvin said with regard to the hamstring injury.
Yeah, hamstring strain, first at bat running down the line. So day to day, I'm not sure how bad it is. We have the off day to figure it out.
Okay, so he says this happened as he was running down the line. He actually got on base in the first inning because of an error, little grounder to the right side of the infield, and an error was made by the pitcher. That got Luciano on, but he had to stretch it out a little bit and go hard, and he had a little bit of a hamstring injury, but he stayed in and went out to the field, and it wasn't until his next at-bat that they decided to take him out.
Right. Hamstring strain is what it gets chalked up to. And so obviously it wasn't so bad that he couldn't go out there in the field, but maybe after he goes out there in the field, that leads to him playing a little bit soft on that ground ball, lollygagging a little bit. Maybe he didn't have the explosion off that hamstring to get in and get the ball as fast as he would have liked. But whatever the reason was, by the time he got back to the dugout and then it was going to be his turn to bat, they had all determined that he wasn't going to be able to go.
Look, the whole thing is so interesting in terms of its timing. Like, this youth movement for the Giants has got to be one of the more fascinating ones I've ever seen, because imagine now, consider all the things that are going on at once. They finally come up, but they're not up here because the Giants chose for now to be the time. They came up out of necessity. All of these injuries are happening at once. But it coincides with the best baseball they've played in 2 years. Okay? Do you want to credit the young guys for that? At least in part. You have to. They've performed and they've also given life to everything that's going on, right? But here's the other piece. If you are intoxicated by the youthful energy that's now been injected onto the roster, you also see that the Giants have gone on a run that makes people realize this not only can, but quite frankly, with this pitching staff, this should be a playoff team. Therefore, it removes the idea of, gosh, let the kids hang out here, deal with their mistakes, because they're going to make them, and let's develop them, and then, poof, we'll be ready to go next year. Nope.
Yeah.
So that's the tough thing, and we'd love to take some calls on that. If you've got an opinion one way or the other, 888-957-9570. The Giants may have just gotten their out. He might be on the injured list tomorrow. But the real rub here is, do you want to ride with Luciano at short with all of the mistakes in the name of development, or do the Giants just simply not have time for that because that takes away from the idea of winning, and they're clearly trying to win? That's the rub right now with this player.
I think it's easy. It's an easy call, and the answer is that you don't keep playing him in the majors. And I know he's doing great with the bat. He's hitting .375 in 10 games, and you are 7-3 in the 10 games that he's played, including today. And it's not just because of him, but since he and Matos and Ramos have been up here, your season has been turned around. Yet, you can't continue to put a guy out there at shortstop, as FP said to us last segment. That's maybe the second most important position defensively behind catcher. It's catcher, it's shortstop, maybe center fielder comes next, but your shortstop has got to be a guy who you can rely on to make the routine play, and ideally, he's a guy who can make the great play, which is what made the Brandon Crawford era so spectacular. He had a couple of good offensive years, but by and large, it was just a gold glove, 140 games a year guy. You put him out there, and you watched him make every routine play, you watched him make some spectacular plays, and you knew you were good at shortstop. Right now, with Luciano, you're nervous. You're biting your nails, and you're rubbing your hands together nervously on every single play, and you just can't have that, especially when you're dealing with a ground ball pitcher as your ace.
Okay, Bob Melvin answered a direct question about the ground ball. We'll play it in a second, but I want to say this back to you first based on what you just said. Like, I'm with you. The Giants need to try to win. And if this guy is putting wins in danger because he's not ready to field ground balls correctly at the shortstop position in the major leagues, I'm sorry. The patience is not there, in my opinion, to let him figure that out at the major league level. So I'm out on that if it were to continue this way. I'm not saying send him down yet, but I am saying that I'd like the Giants to win this year, not develop. That's
right.
Easily is the higher priority. Where I do see this becoming a further conversation, though, in the weeks to come is this. The Giants have been on a heater hitting the ball, but maybe we haven't noticed that in the last 2 games they've scored 2 runs total. Scored 1 in 10 innings yesterday.
Big one.
Yeah, and it's also a cheapie. Like, can we take 10 seconds to realize they won that game by hitting 2 medium deep fly balls, and they lucked out that the guy that was at second base happens to run really well. That's how they won the game yesterday. So that doesn't even really count as a regular run. Normally it would not have been. And then today they grind one out in the 9th inning, 6-0 game, and Elliot Ramos hits like a fister pop-up that goes over the first baseman's head, and Wilmer Flores scores from second base, and you lose 6-1.
Big deal.
Well, here's the issue. It also coincides with Lamont Wade not being in the lineup. And so are the Giants going to, I would argue likely, start to regress a little bit offensively, because here comes the best pitching team in baseball. You don't have Lamont Wade. You're filling that gap somehow at first base. Do you want your heavier hitting shortstop in the lineup, because you're going to need to be able to grind out every run that you can? All I'm saying right now is if Wisely calms down a little bit with the bat, which is also likely, this could become a further conversation here in the next few weeks.
It could, but I think what you're looking at with Luciano defensively is more than just development. It's not that he's just a little rough around the edges. The mistakes he's making are really, really bad and glaring, and I don't think that you can sustain having him be out there making these mistakes. And also, think about his individual regression as a hitter. I mentioned he's hitting .375 in his 10 games. I don't think that he's going to keep hitting .375 over the long sample size. He's probably going to regress to where most younger hitters do, which is probably a .260, .270 hitter, which would still be really good as a younger hitter. But if that happens in concert with his shaky defense, then what are we really doing here as far as him being a plus player at shortstop?
Well, the thing that I think is so kind of alluring about Marco Luciano is it's not even just the batting average, it's the extra base hits. That's how you score in the major leagues, is, you know, as they would call it, do damage. That's how you do damage, is you hit gap to gap, you rake down the line, you pop one over the fence every few days. Marco has that ability, and none of the other guys we're talking about at shortstop do. You're normally fine with that. You don't ask that of your shortstop, but now you're using first base is going to be some sort of a revolving door for at least the next 4 weeks. I know Wilmer has traditionally been a really good bat, and he gapped one today, but he has not been having a great year, and the Giants lineup has really been rolling the last couple of weeks, and that's not going to continue. They're not going to average 7.5 runs a game for the year.
Right.
So you need every extra base bat that you have in the lineup, and Marco is that. So if you could just get him to play passable defense, you would, in theory, want him in there.
Yes,
you just haven't been able to do that yet.
You're asking for passable defense, and I would argue that he's 4 or 5 notches below even passable defense.
I agree.
It is.
I agree.
It's glaringly, embarrassingly obvious how bad he is defensively right now. And I'm not burying a 22-year-old. I'm not out here to try to bury a young player, but you're also trying to put a team on the field defensively that's competitive. And I think that what you're talking about is even more of an indicator for me that you have to do something else. So if your offense is going to regress, and they've scored 2 runs the last 2 games, a cheapie in the 10th, and a who cares one today in the 9th, well, then you need to have a defense that's going to have you have a better chance of winning a game 2-1 or 3-2 that to me makes the defensive part of this even more important than having a guy who could be an extra base threat. He has 2 doubles, 1 triple so far in 10 games. He has no home runs, and he's driven in 1 run. And I know some of that is circumstantial, but he's been mostly singles so far with the Major League club.
Well, I mean, 3 extra base hits. He said 24 at bats.
Yep.
That's a lot. That's a pretty good
1 and
percentage.
8, pretty good.
Yeah, I'll take that.
But it's not like he's a big threat to hit home runs.
No, but
he
you
had
can
1
see
in
it.
AAA, and he doesn't have 1 this year in the big club.
In theory, he actually does have a home run bat. I don't know what's going on this year. And the injuries, his career has been so stop-start in the minors.
Yeah.
But believe me, you know this. Marco can hit the ball a very long way. Marco's got the potential to be a very special bat. And that's why I go back to what I said the other day about how confusing it's been, because if this is kind of what they're getting at the shortstop position, it's a little bit wild that they haven't tried him in some other places before. All right, more from Bob Melvin. He was directly asked if the throw was lackadaisical, and the question was in there as well.
Marco's throw in the 3rd inning that allowed the infield hit, was that as simple as that, just too lackadaisical on the throw?
Not like just timing, just, didn't probably read the speed of the runner who runs really well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, Bob's going to protect his guy, but
right.
Like what he's saying there, that goes to what so many have been arguing, baseball instincts.
Right. And I think lackadaisical it's a synonym for lazy. And I don't think that Marco Luciano was lazy on the play. I just don't think that he was that aware of the speed of the runner. And so he didn't, make that play a little bit more quickly. And had he thought about who the runner was going to be, and had he had that, baseball wherewithal ahead of the play, like you were talking about, maybe he makes the play a little quicker. Also, we don't know if the hamstring was a factor in the, him playing that ball a little bit more slowly.
Yeah, that's a thought.
Well, we'll see if he goes on the IL. Then that would maybe indicate that the hamstring strain was worse than we would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, they called him day to day. Would they put him on the IL? I mean, shoot, if Ahmed's not ready, you might see Casey Schmidt come back up. You're going to need insurance, people who are able to play shortstop. Although Tyler Fitzgerald is up,
yep,
and he has that ability, as does Tyro Estrada in a pinch. And so, I don't know. I don't know, but the whole thing is it's a conversation that I don't think they want to have. Now, 925 throws this out. Why not DH Luciano? He's outplaying Soler right now. Soler is, I thought he was starting to show signs of life in the series against the Rockies. Obviously, he had the home run in New York as well. But gosh, you watch his at-bats today. He is still, and last night for that matter, he is still really searching. He is really searching. And to me, that guy, along with Conforto coming back, if he can pick up where he left off, if Soler could be who they thought he was going to be, then this whole lineup, it's completely different. Everything's different. Because as I've said, the Giants have played so much better. I still think this is a good baseball team, but what they're missing that all the other good teams seem to have is hitters you fear.
Yeah.
I just don't want, if I'm a pitcher going up against this lineup, I'm looking at it going, there's a lot of guys who could get a hit, a lot of guys I got to deal with, but it's not, I don't need to plan for groove a fastball to this guy because the Betts Shohei Freeman thing is about to come up. Where you're like, I'm terrified.
Right.
We do not want to get to that portion of the order. Even the Phillies with Bryce Harper and Real Muto and Castellanos and all that, the Giants don't have that. And the hope was that Chapman and Soler and Conforto would do that. And they largely have not been able to do that.
Consistently. I mean, they've each had little streaks. Chapman had that, 3 homers in 3 games streak, and Conforto early in the year had his little spurt where he was showcasing that power. Tyler Fitzgerald coming off being PCL Player of the Week because he showed that power down in Sacramento now. Can he bring that stick up here and produce? Right now, you're 20th in baseball entering play today in home runs as a team, and that's just not good enough. And You talk about the 107-win team. They were second in baseball, and I know that was the outlier because you had career years from Belt and Crawford, and Posey brought it, and we've run through the list of, 8, 9 guys who had double-digit home runs that year. It was the whole team that was providing the pop, and Soler's not, and Conforto's hurt, and Chapman has been streaky, and so beyond that, you're right. When you face this team, you're not, really worried about one batter, let alone a stretch of 2 or 3 guys who can inflict that kind of damage.
Well, a timely home run is a game changer. Bryce Harper did it to the Giants twice in that 4-game series in Philadelphia. If you've got a bopper that comes up with runners on base, obviously that one swing can completely tilt a ball game, and it is what has the Giants' metrics for a while there up above 7 runs a game during their streak of good play because they had that for a second. Matt Chapman walks to the plate in Pittsburgh down 4 with 2 runs on, and you're like, he needs to homer right now for them to have a shot in the game. And he does. And go to New York, and the bases are loaded for Patrick Bailey, and you're down by 3, and you're like, kind of need you to hit the ball over the fence. And he does.
Yep.
And so, you need more of that, more consistent levels of that. And that's what they've had the last 2 weeks. That's why they're winning most of their games. But the last couple of years, they usually do not have that. And that's what they brought Jorge Soler in to do.
Right. And beyond that, and Dave Fleming had mentioned this before about the pitchers should be feeling a little bit of an embarrassment. And that's the problem, I think, because this team has become reliant on, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's been the case over this win streak, they've been reliant on out-slugging the other team, where this team was constructed on pitching and defense, and we've all been drooling at the rotation. And Kyle Harrison today, another outing where he just, and FP mentioned it, it's learning that it's okay to not throw a strike or start him off with a changeup or pitch a little bit backwards. I was saying that out there in the green room before we came on the air, the idea of pitching backwards and not just trying to pump your fastball in there because he's getting touched up pretty regularly, and the Phillies had him today.
I mean, he'd been on a good streak. They had won 7 straight games in which he was the starter. He hasn't dominated, but he had been consistently solid for a little while. Touched up today, look, that's a really, really good lineup, but you're also not wrong that I think that Kyle has now consistently gotten to the spot where he's like, okay, I'm a big league pitcher. We're not doing the up-down in the games that we played last year. So you're in the rotation, you're a big league pitcher. And what that means is you now need to probably find the next level of who you're going to be as a big leaguer. Because Kyle, throughout his entire minor league run, he was insanely dominant. Why? Because his fastball in the minor leagues is overwhelming. But it's not in the big leagues. It's still a very, very good fastball. But I don't know how much I believe in any of his other pitches being elite. And so he needs to now combine his elite fastball with what Kruk always talks about. And that is a guy changing from being a thrower to becoming a pitcher.
Yeah. And
so he'll get that. I have full confidence. Like the smarts of knowing the little intricacies of how to approach a pitcher or a hitter and how to set him up and how to like play to that book that you have on every hitter. He'll get there. But too often you see him go, hey, man, I got this fastball and I'm going to lean on it. And Kyle Schwarber walks up to the plate today and is like, I got that. Yeah. I got a bat for your fastball.
I got 95.
Go on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, I think Kyle's going to be fine, but he's not a finished product yet either. We're sitting here talking about young guys. He's as young as any of them.
He's 22.
22 years old.
Exactly. And it's okay for him to go through some struggles because he is just 22. But the other side of that is you are relying on him to be one of your best pitchers because you don't have Robbie Ray yet. And Cobb isn't here. And Snell isn't Snell. So now you've got Webb. Hicks is going to pitch more innings than he ever has before, so I don't know how long you can think that you're going to ride Jordan Hicks. And so you look at Kyle Harrison right now and you think, you're our 2. We need you to pitch like a 2, and it's been a little up and down.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're our 2. I don't know if I'd put that. I mean, look.
Right now, I think he's the 2.
Well,
like when Kuminga had to be the Warriors 2, it's like Clay should be the 2 and Draymond should be the 2, but Clay is trying to find it, and Draymond can't control himself, so Jonathan, you're the 2.
Yeah. If I'm Kyle Harrison, I'm like, You paid that guy over there $31 million. He could be the 2. And again, I'm not saying Kyle doesn't want it.
Yeah.
No, he is. He just he's going to get there. Blake Snell's going to be fine.
But I'm just saying right now with his 10.42 ERA, he's not the 2.
I totally hear you. I just don't know in any given game if it matters if you're the 1, 2, 3, 4, or the 5. You got to go out there and
when it's your turn, exactly.
Try to win the baseball game.
I get it.
And the Giants have, I would like to think, a starter almost every night who's capable of doing that. Last night, they had no starter. They went bullpen game, and they threw a shutout of the Philadelphia Phillies for 10 innings. So, they've got the people.
Yeah.
In fact, we should have a conversation about some of these guys, even in the bullpen, because I've noticed, and kind of started with a tweet from Larry Krueger, I've noticed that people hate the Rogers twins. A lot of people are and this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. Grandy, you're one of them. Maybe not hate. That's too strong of a word. But you're uncomfortable with guys with the last name Rogers being in high leverage situations late in games. A lot of Giants fans feel that way. So we can